beautiful people, what is going on? We are about to get into the real history of slavery, Southern Negro. Let's check this out, man. Let's see what's going on here.
All that I know, they teach you to mind your master and your mistress.
Been slaves all our lives. My mother was a slave, my sister was a slave, father was a slave.
They treat me nice as they could treat me. And if I want anything, I'll ask for it. I was taught it that way by my old master.
These are the voices of former slaves, victims of one of America's greatest crimes against humanity. Listening to them speak and hearing their lamentations does a difference.
Man, did y'all hear that? Greatest crime against humanity. It always blows my mind that a human is against another human. Nothing blows my mind more than that. You know, being the same and seeing different. Oh no.
Different level of justice than history books ever could. John Henry Folk was a storyteller and radio show host who in 1941 started doing interviews with former slaves in a project to bring awareness to racism. One former slave he interviewed was Fountain Hughes. Little did Folk realize this interview would be one of his most important.
My name is Fountain Hughes. I was born in Charlottesville, Virginia. My grandfather belonged to Thomas Jefferson. My grandfather was 115 years old when he died. And now I am 101 years old.
Did you hear that, though? He said he was 101 years old. He sound good. His granddaddy died 115. He said his granddaddy belonged to Thomas Jefferson. Belonged. Do you understand that? Like,
Slaves were kidnapped or abducted. Hughes was different. He was born of slaves, as was his father. He didn't know any other life.
It's what they call, we were slaves. We belonged to people. They sell us like they sell horses and cows and hogs and all like that. Have an auction bench, and they put you up on the bench and bid on you, the same as bidding on cattle, you know.
The auction bench was an infamous place among slaves. Here, people would learn not only who their future masters would be, but exactly what price a person could put on another person.
Sell the women, sell the men, all that. And then if they had any bad ones, they'd sell them to the nigger traders, what they call the nigger traders, and they'd ship them down south and sell them down south.
After leaving the auction, they would be at the whims of their new masters.
this right here is beyond sickening. Sheesh.
Of course, when someone is considered to be a piece of property rather than a person, little is done to make them comfortable. Deplorable living conditions, tattered and worn out clothes, and sometimes a bare minimum of food were all that slaves were given.
Colored people didn't have no beds when they were slaves. You know, slept on the floor, pallet here, pallet there. Just like a lot of wild people. We didn't know nothing. Didn't like to look at no book.
Often, the slaves were only dressed in what they showed up in, made mostly of rag and cloth. The lucky ones may have had a pair of shoes or some denim.
So I didn't ever wear no shoes until I was 12. So
Barely, giving food, probably just enough to live, long enough for them to sell again, and barely wearing clothes, man. We really got to be grateful about where we are today in society. Though we have a long way to go, we really got to learn how to be more grateful.
15 years old. Now people put on shoes on babies, when they're 2 years, when they're a month old. I don't know. Put shoes on babies. Just as soon as you see them out in the street, they got shoes on.
Not much attention was given to the slaves' diet. More times than not, they would only have things like soups or stews made from the scraps of the master's dinner.
Wooden tray, dug out, all about that long. And all of them, would get around that tray with spoons and just eat, sit like mush or soup or something like that. All them children get around there and just eat.
Slaves had no weekends, no holidays, no days off. Each day was filled with nothing but work and meeting the needs of the masters.
Night never comes out. You have nothing to do. Time to cut tobacco. If they want you to cut all night long out in the field, you cut. And if they want you to hang all night long, you hang tobacco. It didn't matter about your tired, being tired, you're afraid to say you're tired.
It wasn't a sense of duty that compelled the slaves, nor was it a love for their owners. A cloud of dread hovered over them, as the smallest infraction could mean a painful punishment, usually in the form of beatings. Former slave Laura Smalley described what she saw one day when another slave woman earned a whipping after her master's mistress tried to slap her and she fought back, pushing her into a chair.
But I think that old woman, poor old woman, cat in the peach orchard and whipped her. And, just tied her hand this way, around the peach orchard tree. I remember that just as well, looked like to me, I can't, and round the tree and whipped her. And well, she couldn't do nothing but just kick her feet, just kick her feet. But it just had her clothes off down to her waist, Just didn't have her plumb naked, but they had her clothes down to her waist. And
Robert,
I'm glad they stopped that.
Plan to build your sales team.
That's fantastic. And they can work from any.
I definitely needed a break because that, yeah, it's beyond intense, man. Kind of remind me a little bit of, it's one of my favorite movies. I can't even, Beloved. Seeing, her back with whips, you feel me? You had to have seen the movie in order to understand what I'm talking about, but. Yeah, it's a disturbing movie, kind of like this right here, and this is actually real. So
now and then they'd whoop her, and then snuff the pipe out on her, snuff pipe out on her. The embers in the pipe. Where you ever see the pipe smoking?
Blow them out on her? Good Lord.
Even though slavery was a practice in which evil was free to roam, there were still some owners who aspired to be better, treating the slaves with more dignity and decorum. Having a master who would speak with kindness, show courtesy, and treat them as humans was among the most coveted things any slave could ask for.
They treat me nice as they could treat me. And they all treat me nice. All the white folks that know me, they treat me nice. And if I want anything, I'll ask for it. I was taught it that way by my old master. Don't steal, don't lie. And if you want anything, ask for it. Be honest in what you get. That's what I was raised up with.
Even though the masters would preach honesty, they were still not very trusting. Simply
exactly.
Going out, even on the orders of the master, required a number of steps.
Now I couldn't go from here across the street, or I couldn't go to nobody's house without I have a note or something from my master. And if I had that pass, that was what we call a pass. If I had that pass, I could go wherever he sent me, and I'd have to be back. Whoever he sent me to, they'd give me another pass, and I'd bring that back, so to show how long I'd been gone.
With the passage of the Emancipation Proclamation, the slaves were free, but only by degree. They weren't truly as free as they thought. Union soldiers, who slaves once thought of as liberators, would sometimes pass through and not give a second thought to the people they helped to free.
I remember when the Yankees come along and took all the good horses and took sort of all the meat and flour and sugar and stuff out in the river and let it go down the river. And they know the people wouldn't have nothing to live on, but they done that. And if you was cooking anything to eat in there for yourself, and if they was hungry, they'd go and eat it all up, and wouldn't get nothing. They'd just come in and drink up all them milk. Just do as you please.
Slavers across the South were incredibly hesitant to change after the order, not only because they were losing the labor they paid for, they were losing an entire heritage. Not taking too well to the new proclamation by President Lincoln, the slavers actively withheld the life-changing information from their slaves, sometimes to the point that slaves would end up working on the plantations for up to 6 more months.
And old master didn't tell you, it was free.
He didn't tell you that?
No, he didn't tell. They wait till, I think now they said they wait till 6 months out of that. 6 months.
Wow. That's crazy.
Without guidance, though, many of the slaves found their newfound freedom less glamorous than they had thought. With not a dollar to their names, very few possessions, and little to no education, they found themselves alone. Sadly, millions of newly released slaves, unable to make a living, ended up becoming emaciated, even dying as a result of starvation.
If we got free, we didn't know nothing to do.
Exactly. Exactly. Free with no reparation, basically. I mean, wait, what were they supposed to do? I mean, and then it goes along to show you, or to tell you the quote about Harriet Tubman. She said, I could have freed 1,000 more slaves had they known they were slaves. What?
Places and bound us out for $1 a month. We didn't have no property. We didn't have no home. We had nowhere, nothing. We didn't have nothing on it. Just like the cattle, we were just turned out and get along the best you could. Colored people is free. You ought to be awful thankful. And some of them are sorry they are free now. Some of them now would rather be slaves.
Although freedom had been granted, they realized that it came with a heavy price tag. Even though slavery meant hard work and beatings, it also meant having food and shelter.
Mom and them didn't know where to go. You see, after freedom broke, just like you turn something out, you know. Didn't know where to go. That's just where they stayed. Didn't know where to go. Turn us out just like, you know, you turn out cattle. I say, didn't know where to go.
The slave's freedom was met with mixed emotions. Fountain Hughes was asked about how he felt about his freedom and whether or not he would rather have been a slave again. His answer was haunting.
You know what I'd rather do? If I had any idea that I'd ever be a slave again, I'd take a gun and just end it all right away. Because you're nothing but a dog.
This period was one of the darkest times in the history of the United States, but even though slavery was eventually abolished...
Oh my gosh, that's extremely sad.
In the States, it is quite a different case worldwide, from forced labor to human zoos, or areas of the world where visitors would travel simply to gawk at the local indigenous...
What? Did they say human zoo? Huh?
People. Whatever its form, though, the voices of the slaves matter, bringing to light the sad truth that slavery is not dead today.
Oh, that was intense. My head hurts. This is Coop Troop Live. Thank you so much for joining. Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Sub, so we can do longer content. That's what I'm into. Let's continue to grow, strive, and thrive. You feel me? See y'all next time.